Frieren versus Sukuna will be a fight to remember and to be discussed. Frieren versus Sukuna has to be one of the best fight the anime has to offer. We will be reacting to this Frieren versus Sukuna video, and who will come up on top between Frieren and Sukuna.
The King of Curses, Ryomen Sukuna, and Frieren the Slayer. Two immensely powerful ancient beings of legend who the contemporary world struggles to stack up against. These two have crossed paths in a surprising number of memes and even a fan animation, but who would actually come out on top if they somehow came to blows? In this video, we'll cover two scenarios. The first is that Sukuna in his true form and Frieren at the current height of her power meet somewhere way back when in the Heian era and for whatever reason decide to fight to the death. Neither one knows anything about the other, they're going in completely blind. For the second scenario, we'll be taking Shinjuku Showdown and replacing one overpowered white-hair character for another to face Meguna. In this scenario, both combatants will have some basic knowledge about each other, just as Gojo and Sukuna originally did, and Sukuna will gain access to and the 10 Shadows. And, with the setup out of the way, let's jump straight into the battle. Frieren's scaling is actually really straightforward for the most part, so we'll get the more complicated character out of the way first. Ryomen Sukuna exceeds mere sorcery and enters into the realm of a natural disaster within JJK's world. Glazed by the author nearly as much as Yujiro, which is saying a lot, the King of Curses should certainly scale to or above most, if not all of the feats of strength and speed within the series. The problem is, Jujutsu Kaisen is a bit of a convoluted mess when it comes to power scaling. Take their speed for example. Early series Maki can catch bullets point blank, which would put her at multiple times the speed of sound, but Naoya and Nobito are treated as the fastest sorcerers of the modern era for surpassing subsonic speeds, and a way faster awakened Maki gets outdone by Mach 3 Curse Naoya. Piercing blood, an especially fast attack by the standards of the majority of the cast, is directly stated to be impressive for barely surpassing the speed of sound, and Maki catching a bullet was directly called out as perhaps being too much by either Gege himself or his editor. I've heard both versions and I'm not sure which one is correct. However, on the other hand, we have Kashimo generating lightning and multiple characters reacting to it on some level, we have Toji straight up receiving lightning in slow motion in the anime, Kenjaku escaping the event horizon of a black hole, which would require him to at least move faster than light itself, since even light cannot escape the immense gravity of a black hole, directly referenced in the manga itself by the way, and Kashimo in his final form utilizes electromagnetic waves, which travel at nearly the speed of light. And Sukuna dodges it. It could be aim dodging, but it's still nonetheless a very impressive feat. And very light spoilers for Jujutsu Modulo, in the recent chapters a character named Abora uses light-based attacks. Although at the same time, the most recent chapter from just a couple days ago seems to imply that nobody in the past has danced at sub-light speed before, as that kind of thing is quote-unquote unexplored by humanity. So that kinda does confirm that nobody has fought at even sub-light speed before, calling the light speed stuff even more into question.
At first glance, Frieren versus Sukuna feels like a mismatch in Frieren's favor, because she's ancient, hyper-intelligent, and casually bends magic in ways that look effortless. But the moment you stop comparing aesthetics and start comparing combat realities, the fight shifts hard in Sukuna's direction. Because Frieren is built for wars of attrition, preparation, and emotional distance, while Sukuna is built for immediate, overwhelming lethality. Frieren's greatest strength is her patience and spell variety, but Sukuna doesn't give opponents time to explore options. He deletes space itself, and that's the core problem, because Cleave and Dismantle don't care about magical sophistication, defense layers, or centuries of experience. They scale automatically to the target's durability and cut anyway. Frieren can analyze spells, counter magic, and adapt mid-fight, but Sukuna's attacks aren't spells in the traditional sense. They're expressions of cursed technique that function more like environmental inevitabilities, and once Malevolent Shrine goes up, there is no positioning, no safe distance, no outthinking the battlefield, because the battlefield itself becomes hostile. Frieren has shields, barriers, and defensive magic, but Sukuna's entire combat philosophy is about bypassing defense rather than overpowering it, and his feats against characters who specialize in protection and regeneration show that survivability doesn't slow him down, it just delays the inevitable. The biggest misconception fans make is assuming Frieren's calm.
Now let's see if Frieren has the raw physical attributes required to survive against this kind of monster. As said before, Frieren is very straightforward in comparison to Sukuna. Just like the King of Curses, she is the pinnacle of the world outside of like one single other character, so any feat performed in the series, the elf should scale above. With that being said, Stark slams a dragon into the ground at high speeds, and moving something that heavy that quickly would require enough force to destroy large buildings. Frieren can casually produce building to city block level environmental damage with her basic attack magic while holding back to not kill her opponent. Denken creates a firestorm tornado which has been calculated to town level, Lavina freezes an entire lake which would require large town levels of energy, and Richter raises an enormous chunk of earth in seconds, which is a city level feat in terms of the kinetic energy required to do this. All of this Frieren outclasses multiple times over since Denken is implied to be above Richter and Frieren treats the old mage like a light morning exercise. But for Frieren's most impressive feat of power, I have to get into manga spoilers for a second. So skip to this timestamp if you absolutely do not want to hear it, but
Demeanor means she can handle chaos, but Sukuna doesn't fight clean. He pressures psychologically, taunts, escalates, and adapts brutally fast. And Frieren has never been shown dealing with an enemy who enjoys breaking opponents mid-combat rather than simply defeating them. Even Frieren's trump cards rely on recognizing patterns and exploiting openings, but Sukuna doesn't repeat patterns long enough to be solved. And once he realizes Frieren's magic isn't instantly lethal, he stops playing. This matchup isn't about raw intelligence or age, it's about tempo, and Sukuna controls tempo better than almost any anime antagonist, forcing fights into short, violent windows where one mistake means death. Frieren could win in a scenario where she has prep time, distance, and full knowledge of Sukuna's abilities. But in a neutral encounter, Sukuna's ability to erase space, ignore durability scaling, and dominate the battlefield means Frieren doesn't get to be Frieren long enough to matter. Sukuna wins not because Frieren is weak, but because he's built to end fights before wisdom, restraint, or reflection can ever come into play.
But it's pretty light, I promise. In the manga, Frieren and one other character respectively take a vast amount of area and transmute it all into gold, and then transmute it back from gold into its original composition. Transmuting that much mass has been estimated to require mountain levels of energy, and Frieren does this while fighting a high-level opponent that actually gives her trouble, already injured and somewhat exhausted from the fight, and she still has enough energy to do that. As for speed, Frieren's casual attack spells have been calculated to Mach 3 in the anime based on the distance they travel in the time that they do, and that is assuming cinematic timing isn't slowing them for us and making them appear slower than they should be. And there are various feats in the manga that also range from subsonic to around Mach 10, all done pretty casually. But the more impressive end for Frieren is that she and some of her higher level opponents can dodge spells that look like lightning, and their name is literally Destructive Lightning. They've technically never been ultra confirmed to actually be real lightning and could just be a name fallacy, but I'm pretty sure it's just blatantly meant to be lightning. It looks like lightning, it's called lightning, it's lightning. So with just a tiny benefit of the doubt, you can comfortably use this to get Frieren to lightning speed. The last thing I'll briefly discuss is the black hole. In the anime, Frieren creates something that looks suspiciously like a black hole, and if you want to equate it to the actual celestial phenomenon, then same as JJK, her speed should be faster than light to be able to perceive it and destroy it before it sucks everything in, and she'd have to have insane power. Realistically though, I don't think this is a real black hole personally. So in the end, what you have is a character who scales to city level while suppressed and mountain level at the highest she's displayed, but even then it was not under ideal conditions to say the least, so Frieren likely hasn't truly displayed her limit yet.
Another thing people overlook is how differently these two characters interpret danger. Frieren comes from a world where even the strongest demons still obey readable rules: mana output, spell structure, intent, and her entire fighting style is about recognizing those rules and dismantling them over time. Sukuna doesn't operate on readable morality or combat etiquette at all. He escalates instantly, tests limits by breaking them, and if something survives once, he assumes it won't survive twice. That mindset matters because Frieren often allows opponents to reveal themselves before responding, while Sukuna uses that hesitation as an opening to end the fight outright. There's also the issue of killing intent. Frieren fights to win, Sukuna fights to dominate, humiliate, and erase. And that difference shows in how fast things spiral once he decides an opponent is worth his attention. Even Frieren's experience advantage becomes less relevant here, because Sukuna's adaptability doesn't come from wisdom or planning. It comes from raw instinct sharpened through constant violence, meaning he doesn't need to understand her magic to tear through it. And once Sukuna realizes Frieren isn't fragile, that's when the gloves come off. No testing, no curiosity, just overwhelming force layered on top of spatial annihilation. Which is why, in a real encounter, Frieren's greatest strength, her composure, ironically becomes her biggest vulnerability.